Hey there, and welcome to the She Calls Her Shots podcast. Every week, we chat through different business building topics that will help you gain clarity around your goals, find inspiration in your journey, and also help you create a life and a business that you love. My name is Krista, and I'm a wedding and brand photographer and your go-to no-fluff business coach. In these episodes, we talk through both the tactical strategies, habits, and the mindset work that will help you take those really big leaps. And we always focus on the real talk and the behind the scenes of what it takes to create a sustainable and a thriving business. Because let's be honest, the work isn't always glamorous, but it's always worth it. So girlfriend, let's make some moves and start calling our own shots. Hello and welcome back to the She Calls Her Shots podcast. If you are listening when this is going live, we are just a few days away from the new year. So if you're feeling anything like me, I have been trying to be very intentional about how I end the year. And I've seen this theme kind of going around. Maybe you have too. I'd be curious to hear if you've seen this as well, but kind of ending the year not in hustle mode. I feel like most years, as I start to get closer to the new year, I try to get really ahead of schedule. But usually what that ends up looking like is me planning out, like I love planning, right? So I'll plan out all the social media posts. I'll pour hours and hours of time into creating all this content. The problem is that I do it in a way that is not sustainable. Once the new year hits, I don't have hours and hours and days to plan for the next month ahead. And so I'm trying to lean into this other energy of how can I be really present here in this moment where I am, honoring that I do have goals and I do have things that I want to incorporate and add into the new year. I have some habits I want to not bring into the new year, and just really trying to figure out how I can be in that space without kind of feeding too much into the energy of prepping and planning. Because sometimes, as much fun as it is in the moment, it sets me up in my head to think that this is how it's always going to be. Like every single month, I'm going to have this same time, space, energy to pour into whatever planning I have. And that's just not realistic. So all of that to say that I hope that you are enjoying these last few days of 2022. And yeah, just kind of living in a space where you feel good and letting yourself do the things that you need. And before we dive into this topic, so we're going to talk about, again, very aligned to the time of year that I'm releasing this, but stepping into a new year with that aligned focus. So, really how to enter into the new year with that energy of I'm going to honor myself, the season that I'm in, the goals that I have, without putting too much pressure on ourselves to hit these unrealistic goals. But before we dive into all of that, I did have some really exciting things that I wanted to share first with you, my listeners, my community, and that is I have a brand new website launching really soon and a brand new coaching offer, which I'm so excited to share. But what that means is that I am also going to be shifting my social media handles. So you probably have noticed if you have been listening for a little while that anytime I've shared about social, I've asked for you to connect with me at my Krista Marie Photography Instagram. Moving forward, that will be shifting. So if you listen to the podcast way back in the day, at the very beginning when I first started, I was using the Instagram handle at Hey Krista Marie. So that Instagram user is actually going to be kind of reignited into this new year. So there will be more of a separation between my photography Instagram page and my coaching Instagram page. So you'll notice that shift happening starting today and for future episodes. And I'm really excited to share about the new website and the new offer. All of that will be coming really soon. But I also wanted to share that as we're coming into the new year, I do have space for one additional one-on-one coaching client. And so if you've been listening in, if one of your goals for 2023 is to work one-on-one with a coach, is to have someone in your corner who can help you eliminate the overwhelm and get clarity on your goals and figure out what that bigger picture is and how you can actually feasibly and actively work towards those goals, I would love to explore if working one-on-one together might be a great fit. You also might be a great fit for my coaching offer that is not yet launched. And so I would love to have a conversation with you about it. I will put a link in the show notes so that you can connect with me and fill out the application, and we can schedule a time for us to have a call. But first things first, just thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for giving me your time. I know especially this time of year as things get busy, we're spending time with family, it's the holidays, it's the new year. I just want to say thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of your journey today. And what sparked the idea for today's episode? Of course, it's going to be, right? It's a new year, we've got new goals, and I personally have been really starting to shift away from the hustle. You probably can tell if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, and I'm really focused on leaning more into finding my own inner flow and helping my clients find their own inner flow, and also helping you as listeners find your own inner flow, because the reality is that is sustainable. Any practices, any frameworks, any ways of growing your business that is hustle, go, build, do this, do that, is likely not going to be something that you can maintain for a long time. And so in today's episode, I'm excited to really dive into how we can start to step into this new year, but really also kind of do a gut check on what is our focus. How can we do it in a way that feels really aligned and really honoring where we are right now, while also honoring where we want to go and the journey that's ahead of us and the things that we want to accomplish. So first things first, the first thing I want to dive into is asking yourself this question: how do you want to feel next year? And I don't just mean like you don't have to do this for the whole year. It doesn't just need to be one word, because that's one question that I get a lot is, well, you know, I'm a complex human being, and I'll probably have different priorities and different seasons, and all of that is totally okay. But there is likely going to be something that you want to focus on next year that maybe you didn't focus on as much as you wish you would have this year, or something that you know is coming up into the new year that's going to be a big priority for you. And so it's figuring out, how do I want to feel? What's important to me in this season? And so for you, for example, you might be ending the year spending time with family and realizing, you know what, my family, I feel like I didn't spend as much time with them as I wanted. I feel like I was, day in and day out, really working on growing my business, but I feel like I was just more busy than I was productive. And next year, I want to really make sure that I have that space and have that time to spend with my family. Or maybe it's your health. Maybe you have, been working so much on growing your business that you feel like your health has taken a back seat. And so you want to focus on your eating and moving your body and doing things that feel really good for you. Maybe you want to just focus on your mental health, like the things that you are consuming, being really proactive about, practicing self-love and self-care and self-acceptance, and doing all of the things that you need to be able to make sure that your mental health is in a good state. And so kind of asking yourself, what is my priority? And it doesn't have to be for the whole year. It can also just be for the next 90 days. And that's something that I think as we talk about goal setting, as we talk about, strategies or habits that we want to build, I think it's important to put it into context that this doesn't need to be the be all end all for how you want to feel, right? Like this doesn't need to be the one and done. This is how, once I write this, it's like set in stone. Let's just focus on the next 90 days. And so what do you feel is really important to you, and what can you make sure to honor? And then also, along with that, what are some things that you can do to help honor that? So if it is spending more time with your family, if you know that you sometimes get pulled to overwork in your business, to, keep working past 5 p.m. or to, whatever it might look like for you, like figuring out, okay, I already know what my tendencies are. I already know what my habits are. And then if you haven't listened to my last solo episode all about habits and how to change them, I highly recommend listening to that because it'll be very relevant to this topic. But figuring out, now that I know what my habits have been, what's one thing that I can implement that's going to start to shift this habit? Because one thing that's important to remember is we're not going to shift an entire habit overnight. We're not going to be able to just reprioritize our life and immediately, without any effort, all of a sudden we're spending all of the time with our family and we're doing all of these great things. Like, we have to honor ourselves and know that this is going to take work and it's going to take time. So figuring out what is important to you and then figuring out the habits that you've built around that priority, whether they are helping you work towards it, or maybe pulling you away from what it is that you want to be doing more of. And then just starting with one habit that you can shift or change or add into your routine to help support that vision of how you want to feel and who you want to be. And so, number one, I think it's really important, get really clear what's important to you, how do you want to feel. The second thing, and this really kind of this is like really very much business focused, is getting clear on your numbers and how you want to make money in the new year. Money is such an interesting, overwhelming topic, I feel like, for all of us, because we're not really taught this. And from when we're children, we have all of these money blocks and all of these beliefs that we have started to, stories that we've started to tell ourselves and beliefs that we've started to believe about money and what that means for us and how we should chase after it. And, if it should be easy to make or if it should be really hard to make. Like, we have all of these stories. And so money can be difficult, right? Like, thinking about it can be difficult, but I want to start by just having us get clear. What is the number that you want to make next year? And not just pulling a number out of a hat, because I can tell you that for so long in my business, when I was full-time, I have been a full-time wedding photographer for the last 10 years, but for a long time when I was working towards becoming full-time, when I still had my my full-time job that I did in like the corporate world, I kept chasing after this ridiculously big number for my business. And the funny thing was that, first of all, I had a full-time income, so I didn't need that really big number. And I just picked that really big number because it was a number that sounded right to me. It was a number that I felt like if I said that to someone, they would be really impressed, right? They'd be like, wow, you made so much money in your business. And I hate to say that, but that's the honest truth, is that I was chasing after a number that just sounded good and sounded like if I made this, I would really be a legitimate business owner. The problem with that is that I hadn't actually taken the time to sit down and figure out, what does my number actually need to be? And for a lot of us, I think that this is where some of us get stuck, is that we start to think about these lofty, big numbers. And your goal might be a really big, lofty number, but I encourage you to sit down and actually figure out, what's the number that you need to hit to live the life that you want to live? Because for me, what I found was that this really big number that I was chasing after, when I sat down and I wrote down, how do I want to live my life? What are the things that I want to spend money on? What are the things that are important to me? I realized that the number that I needed was actually a lot smaller, and it was frankly a lot more attainable. And because it was more attainable, my brain actually believed that I could do it. Whereas just pulling this big number out of the air that sounded impressive, my brain in the back subconsciously all the time was kind of like, are you really going to hit this? And you might feel that sometimes, even if your number still feels big, but it's what you need to be making. Your brain might still subconsciously be saying, like, this feels really big. Are you going to hit this? That's normal and that's okay. But at least in your gut that this is like something that you have thought about. This is a number that means something to you. And this is something that that once you achieve it, where that money is going. Hey there, just interrupting briefly to mention that if you're really enjoying this episode, you'll probably also love being on my email list. Each week, I send out tips and resources and inspiration to make building your business feel more fun. We dive deeper into the podcast episodes, we share relatable and sometimes embarrassing stories about the real life behind the scenes of being a business owner. And I love to share tips and resources to help make the journey feel a little easier and a little bit more enjoyable. So head on over to KristaMarieLynch.com and enter in your info to join. So that's the second thing I want to kind of talk through today, is just getting clear on your numbers and also getting clear on how you want to make money. And so figuring out what are the different services or products or things that you offer to your clients. And have you kind of pigeonholed yourself into only offering a couple of services or products? And kind of expanding on that is this follow-up question of how many different ways do people have to work with you? And if you feel like there's only a couple of options, are there ways that you can expand it? So for example, if you're a photographer, maybe you have for the last, however many years or however many months focused on only doing family portrait sessions, right? Like 1 hour family portrait sessions. That's just what you do. Are there ways that you can expand your offerings? So when you get on the phone, when you have an inquiry, when someone comes to you, you have a multitude of things and ways that you can work together. So maybe you offer like 30-minute family sessions. Maybe you offer a back to school session that's like specifically geared towards a seasonal time of back to school pictures. Maybe you offer, extended family sessions. Instead of just a 1 hour, small family shoot, maybe you offer more time and more ability to capture more people, right? Like just starting to think about when someone comes to me and inquires or, requests services or wants to purchase a product, when we talk about the options, how many options am I giving them? And is there enough for people to feel like their needs can be met? Or have I pigeonholed myself into only offering a set amount of things because that's what everybody else is doing, right? Or maybe you want to expand. If you're a photographer, maybe you want to expand into branding photography. And there's so many different avenues and different options of sessions that you could offer there. But really just starting to figure out what are my options and how can I expand that? And then figure out, okay, these are the ways that I can make money next year. These are the things that I'm excited about. And these are the things that I can put time and effort into talking about. That way you don't feel like you're talking about the same thing over and over, right? If you only have offered 1 hour family sessions, chances are you're probably burnt out on talking about it. And so the more different ways that you can expand your offerings, you'll kind of revitalize your marketing efforts because you'll have new things that you can be talking about, new services, and it just feels good to kind of switch things up a little bit. And then kind of in alignment with that, the next thing I wanted to talk through is content creation and really leaning into that and shifting your identity towards identifying as a content creator. And to give you a little bit of insight, this was something that has been a recent shift for me because content for me felt like a means to an end. So for example, for the podcast, right? Like, maybe there was a time where I thought, okay, what podcast episode can I put out today that will inspire people enough to want to contact me and work with me? Or social media, Instagram is another great example, right? What post can I put out today with a call to action that's going to inspire people to take action to want to work with me? And it was this idea in my head that the content that I created, the sole purpose of it was to get clients. And when you think about that, it makes sense, right? Like, on one hand, that is what content is for. But it wasn't until I made this shift and I realized, what if the whole end goal isn't to get new clients? What if internally, mentally, from my content creation, inner part of me, what if the end goal is just to create great content for my audience and my community? And it sounds like such a subtle shift, but that one idea unlocked so much potential inside of me because it did a couple of things. Number one, it eliminated the pressure that I was putting on each piece of content. Each podcast episode, each Instagram post, it no longer had to be this big, insightful, oh, this is going to be the thing that really connects with people. So it really allowed me to just share more of me and share more of the content that I wanted to share. And it released that pressure off of it. But second, another thing that it did is that people connect more with you when you are showing up authentically, right? I don't think that that's going to be a surprise for anyone that hears that. So when you're showing up in a way where you are just here to serve and to give content that will be helpful to someone, when you are showing up with that intention behind it, people are going to more authentically connect and engage with you as a person, which is naturally going to make them want to learn more. You know, they may just, because they are so connected with you, want to reach out to work with you. But we eliminate that pressure, and it also allows us to get more creative with the content that we're putting out there. And I really want to encourage you, no matter what your job title is, if you are a photographer, if you are a course creator, if you are an educator, if you are just a creative, like no matter what you identify as for your job, I would love for you to start identifying as a content creator, because there are people out there that you can serve with your content. And it can be tips, it can be, insights, it can be different perspectives. As a photographer, you can not only put out things out there of like, here's how to prep for your session and here's how to think about this, but you can also just put out inspirational content for your audience, right? And not just like inspiration, like put up a post, but maybe you put out a piece of content that talks about something, that you've recently experienced. Maybe you do family sessions and you are also a parent, and you can put out there like, other parents, I see you, right? Like, this is what we're going through. This is what we're feeling. And that type of content is going to resonate with your audience. And so getting really curious about how can I identify more, not just as my job title, but as a content creator, that will then allow me to shift into making content creation feel more fun again. Because everyone that I talk to, almost all of my clients, we know that we need to be on Instagram, but we're burnt out. And we're tired of putting out content, and we don't want to have to show up, and we don't want to have to do reels, and we don't want to have to do all of these things that we feel are required of us. But 9 times out of 10, that feeling, that burned out feeling, that overwhelmed feeling comes because of the pressure that we're putting on ourselves to show up. And so how can we start to release that? And then the next thing that I wanted to talk about is big picture goals. And a lot of times when I talk to clients, when we go through vision planning exercises, sometimes the bigger picture is the hardest thing to see, because it is, right? Like, we're talking about 1, 2, 3, 5 years time. We're not talking about what's in front of us and what's ahead of us right now. But as you're starting to, so kind of working backwards from what we first talked about, as you're starting to think about, okay, over the next 90 days, what's important to me? Who do I want to be? How do I want to feel, right? And like really getting clear, how do I want to make money? What are the ways that I want to work with people? What are the offers, the services, the products that I want to offer? How can I really lean into identifying as a content creator? How can I, constantly feel like I have worthy content, right? Like, how can I make it fun? How can I make it feel fulfilling and also know that I am providing value to my clients, right? Like, as we're starting to make these identity shifts, then starting to think, okay, does this align, this person that I want to become, does it align with who I want to be in 1, 2, 3, 5 years time? And if for example, maybe this year, again, maybe your goal was to focus more on family over the next 90 days. Well, that gives you some good insight into who you want to be over the next 5 years, right? Like, your family is still going to be there. And so really starting to think about, okay, knowing that, what are the offers and services that I'm providing, and will they allow me to live a life that honors my family? And so I'm going to actually talk about this from a course creator or like coach, educator example. So this is also a real raw moment, because last year it was my goal and my dream to offer a membership site, a monthly membership. If you listen to any of the podcast episodes around that time, you probably heard me talking about it. And it was something that I was so passionate about. It was really, I just felt in my being that it was what I needed to do. And I did. It's really interesting. I've learned so much looking back. The things that I was really excited about was being able to pour into a community. So that was aligned. And so the interesting thing is my coaching offer that I have coming out in the beginning of the new year is also coaching to a community. It's just in a way that's way more aligned with who I want to be. But coming back to this example, I'm realizing now, hindsight, looking back, had that membership site like quote unquote worked, or had I continued to pour into growing that, it would have been all consuming for me, because the membership site at its core was every single month new learning content, whether it was created by me, whether it was sourced, me sourcing into my community and getting other people to come in to teach. But I mean, it would be an all consuming role. And even while I was building it, the hustle was real, I'll be honest with you, because there were so many moving parts. I still had the podcast, I still had photography. I literally, if you looked at my calendar, it was just a hot mess express, day in and day out. But I say all of this because I realized looking back that had I continued pursuing that dream, it would not have aligned with the person that I want to be and how I want to spend my time 2, 3, 5 years from now. Now, could I eventually build out a team that helps, create and manage the content, source the content, release the content? Yes, absolutely. But a team costs money. And so there probably would have been a significant amount of time where the responsibility would have fallen on me until I had the funds, the means, and all of that to be able to build a team, grow a team. I would also have to learn how to manage a team. So all of this to say that really getting honest with ourselves of the offers, the products, the services that I'm offering. What will this require of me in the future? And will it be in alignment with the person that I want to be, how I want to spend my time, and how I want to show up? And then lastly, the last thing that I want to dive into, which I'm actually not going to dive into too much today, but is diving into goal setting. So once you know who you want to be, how you want to show up as, how you want to make money, you identify as a content creator, you have kind of started to identify your vision for the next 1 to 2 years, who you want to be, how you want to spend your time. The next step really is goal setting. But I want to save that for the next episode, because the next solo episode, because goal setting itself is such a big topic. And so I wanted to end this episode today with a couple of things. Number one of my favorite quotes is by Henry Ford. You've probably heard it. It's, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And I want you to, I'm actually going to repeat that. I want that to kind of sit with you for a moment. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And it's really just leaning into this idea that, and I say this all the time, but the things that you tell yourself matter. And as we're approaching this new year, as we're dreaming into these new goals, these new visions that we have for ourselves, I want you to remember that instead of dreaming or stepping into this different version of you, or this different person, or this new you, right? Instead, how can we focus on stepping into just the more aligned version of ourselves? It's still the same us. It's still the same us that sometimes falls back to tendencies that we might not love. It's still us that sometimes falls back into habits that we may want to change. It's still the same us who manages our time a certain way, or, has these quirks and feelings and this being, and just making sure that we're honoring that, and that we're not so consumed with trying to change or be this different version of us, and instead giving ourselves a little bit more grace into just knowing that there are small things that we can do to start to make that shift. That person that we want to become is not that far away. It's not a different version of us. It's not a different person. It just requires small shifts to help us explore who we want to be and how we want to feel. And so first of all, I hope that resonates. I hope that that lands with you. If it does, again, I'd love for you to send me a message on Instagram at Hey Krista Marie. I'd love to hear your takeaway from today. And I just hope that this is an invitation for you to practice a little bit more self-love and a little bit more self-acceptance. And then just knowing that you are right where you need to be and meeting yourself there. And my second invitation is I would love for you to share this episode with someone who might appreciate that reminder. You can send them directly in a message, you can share it to your stories, you can tag them. But I just want to also just take a moment to say thank you, because this honestly has been an incredible year for me and for the podcast. And truly none of that would be possible without your support. And so thank you so much for everyone who has listened in, for everyone who has sent me a message, who has shared episodes with their friends, for everyone who has, let me know how much the episodes or the podcast has meant to them. Just from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And thank you for allowing me to be a part of your 2022. I'm so excited and grateful that we can explore even more of this and even more growth into 2023. And here's to a new year that's filled with growth, filled with evolving, filled with more intention as we follow our dreams. So with that, just thank you so much for listening in, and I will see you over in the next episode. One last thing before you go, I'd absolutely love it if you left a review on Apple Podcasts. Or if you've already left a review, I'd love for you to share this episode with your business bestie. I love getting to shout out my listeners on the show, and the more listeners that we have, the more that I can help others create a thriving and sustainable business too. Thank you so much again for being a part of this community, and I can't wait to hear your takeaways from today's episode.